I'd like to call the January 23rd, 2024 meeting of the Select Board to order. We're here in the Select Board meeting room at Town Hall. We're also on Zoom, and folks can watch us on the local cable channels as well as on YouTube on the RCTV feed. And so just a review of the agenda tonight. We'll start with public comment, then we'll have Select Board Liaison and Town Manager reports. Then we'll have at 7:30 a public hearing on the change of officers and directors for the Meadowbrook Golf Club liquor license. And so we have some materials in our packet as always on that. We'll also have our second agenda item on Meadowbrook. We'll get an update on the Meadowbrook Trail easement process. And then third, we'll have a presentation from Edge Sports regarding the Simon's Way study. And then we'll finish with future agenda items and approve the meeting minutes. So we'll go to public comment now. So
can I just ask if any SWAC members are on Zoom?
Sure.
Hello out there. Is anyone on Zoom from SWAC?
No, there's no one on Zoom.
All right, so I might have to call it later.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are any members from the public who would like to speak here in person at Town Hall, if you could please come to the podium so the camera can see you and the mics can hear you, and state your name and address. And this is comment on any of our items on the agenda tonight. Anyone in the room? Okay, go ahead. If you could go behind, yeah.
Ben Ream, 972 Main Street. Thank you.
Okay. Ben, did you have any public comment on anything?
I don't know exactly what your agenda is tonight. I'm a member. I've got my fingers in a fair number of pies.
Sure.
I've been on the Trails Committee for 7 years.
Okay.
And I'm on the Rec and Social Services Committee, and I try to keep my hand in on the not conservation, CAC,
Yeah, Climate Act Advisory.
So,
Okay.
So I got a little interested in a lot of things.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Caitlin, is there anyone on Zoom now who's joined for public comment?
No one for public comment.
Okay, great. So now we'll start with Select Board Liaison reports. Mark?
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks.
So, hi folks, a few things for tonight. So first, let me start out with RECALC, the Reading Center for Active Living Committee. The process is moving ahead, developing a feasibility study. We've hired an architect called H+A. There are 3 locations under consideration right now with some different options that range from a dedicated senior center to a community center with dedicated space for seniors, plus the possibility of a gym and recreation space. The 3 locations right now under consideration are Pleasant Street at the current center, Simon's Way, and Oakland Road. The process that they're going through right now, the architect, is to talk to the different stakeholders and understand their needs from different perspectives. I'll give a quick update on Council on Aging and others who've already done that. Then there'll be some public sessions that'll be coming up called charrettes, which will be an opportunity for input and sharing ideas, and also listening a little bit to some of the thoughts that have been formed thus far. The timing for the charrettes is 2nd and 3rd week in February. So those will be coming up pretty soon. And there'll be notices going out quickly about those so you can hear about them. Their plan remains that they'll share some conceptual designs with RECALC and then with the Select Board in the early April timeframe, and then be ready to share with town meeting. The Council on Aging met since our last meeting also. They were sharing some of their input with RECALC in terms of needs, sharing with the architect in terms of needs. And that was the focus of the meeting, was to kind of give input to them, so that was great. Town Forest Committee has been moving ahead and working with the Bylaw Committee. They've helped to structure a new suggested bylaw change that will be coming forward for April. For the warrant and for town meeting. More about that as things move ahead. And last item on my list, I saw a note today that the Healy administration filed some legislation about changing municipal options. But one of the things that was in there was something about updated borrowing for school building loans that they mentioned would be improvements in the process. So we probably should just be on top of what that means. It was just proposed legislation, I think, at this point, so we'll see where it is. Those are my updates for now.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Carlo?
Sure, thanks. Last night, a recreation committee met, excuse me. And a few agenda items, and one of them was pickleball. And that kind of spurred a conversation, about the deed, a few deed restrictions at Memorial Park and a few and how we've been violating them for over 100 years. So, that was brought up by some neighbors, and, Eric Gaffin, the chair, said he would look into it, along with Jim Sullivan. And the pickleball courts are officially closed for the winter. So pickleball players there to try to keep them open because they like to play outdoors, but they decided with DPW input and just overall, let's just close them because that makes it fair because tennis is closed and everything else is closed. And they're gonna reopen in March. And then they also talked about better signage at all the fields and how challenging that could be, or maybe doing a QR code that would link to, no trash, no littering, no drinking, no shoveling of courts, no, cutting the grass, it's just a whole litany of things, and they're gonna, discuss that further, I think, but that would be a big undertaking to make one general sign for all the parks and fields. And that was really it, so I left before the very end, before they scheduled the next meeting, but they should be meeting in February.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Jackie. The school committee continued with their budget. One of the big takeaways was extended day was going up by $20 extra a month, which is $5 a week. So it's not really that much in the grand scheme of things. Last night was the public forum for MBTA communities. I know you'll have more on it, so just for my portion from being there, it was good to see, 50, 60 people in attendance. I know there was like 40, 50 on Zoom or whatever, but I'll let you go more into that. And then the charter committee is meeting on Monday, this coming Monday. And like I mentioned last time, we completed Articles 1 through 8, and we're going to be having town council's input on the various questions that have come up through the entire process, and then setting a kind of public forum date going forward after that. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Killen School Building Committee met Monday night, and we are deciding on a project charge. We have a proposal from the architects, and the members need to submit feedback, and then we will vote that in. We have created working groups to provide recommendations for the full committee to vote on. Those categories are the Educational Committee, Sustainability Committee, and the Communication Committee. Communication is so important, and we will be looking to work within existing channels in the town and the schools and coordinating, but also we are evaluating proposals for a website. And the Sustainability Working Group will hopefully have their first meeting at the end of this month, and we will define the sustainability goals for the project and make recommendations. So these aren't subcommittees, these are just working groups to kind of divide and conquer and bring recommendations back to the committee. I was fortunate enough to attend the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting last week. Jackie was there as well, and I saw a lot of staff. We saw Matt, we saw Jane Wellman, we saw Sean Donahue, and I'm sure I didn't see everyone. Oh, we saw Victor, our assessor, Santiago. So that was really great. Let's see. One of the big announcements, I was very curious about, the financial state of the union. So I attended the Division of Local Services seminar, and there was a lot of talk about the Municipal Empowerment Act, which the governor was supposed to file on Monday. Lots and lots of moving parts in there. Local options for people, communities to increase their meals tax 1%. There are some provisions in there which are interesting about being able, actions we can take to reduce our OPEB liabilities. They're proposing that Division of Local Services will take on assessing telecom and utility companies' properties. So, we have a few of those in town, so that should be interesting. And kind of take on what we have already started doing with Linfield Wakefield, facilitate regional boards for assessing purposes. I understand they are going to introduce, they are very concerned about making sure that we have a pipeline of well-trained financial people to help us at various town halls across the community. So they're coming up with a local finance fellowship for future finance professionals. It'd be great if we could look into that. They're looking to seek more exemptions for retirees. They're focused on increasing local senior income exemptions. Procurement laws, this will be a good one for us. They've proposed increasing the procurement law from $10,000 to $100,000. And I believe that brings that in line with school procurement, but we've seen that when we went to hire our consultant for this town manager search in this day and age, $15,000 is not a lot of money, but we are forced to go through the RFP process. So I'm glad to see that limit, and hopefully this passes, and that'll make our lives easier. So also other good news in terms of revenue, there will be a proposed 3% increase for unrestricted local aid, which is always great to hear. An increase in 100 million for Chapter 90. More grant support, more tech support for communities, matching grants for tech assistance, community compact IT grants. There's an Affordable Homes Act with 175 million for infrastructure related to housing development. So, as communities like Reading are seeing new developments built, we all know there's sewer and other infrastructure that will be likely needed to be upgraded. So I'm happy to see that as an option for us to, and it does relate, I think, to MBTA communities. As development happens, we need to upgrade the infrastructure. That's good. There's a lot of packed into there. I'll let Jackie share some more. A big emphasis on the Inflation Reduction Act. There's so much money in there for municipalities. So we need to go after it. We're strongly encouraged to go after it. And my final update would be related to green communities. The regulations are in front of the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee, of which Rich Haggerty is now vice chair. So Representative Haggerty shared with me that he is speaking to the chair about expediting the process through his committee to get us to the point where we have the regulations. We're able to refile our application in time for a June 21st deadline. And to that end, I also spoke with our MAPC rep this week, and I'm happy to hear that MAPC is now fully staffed, and he's excited. This is Dylan, and I think his last name is Patel. He's excited to help Reading get over the finish line. So we'll be working with RMLD and our MAPC rep, and fingers crossed, giving everybody as much heads up as possible. We'll have our application submitted by June 21st, and we could be approved within a month later, and we're off to the races. And I did confirm that it is still an option with green communities to apply for a multi-year grant. So with projects like the senior center in front of us, we're going to get an initial grant, which is still predicted to be between $150,000 and $200,000 as a, welcome to the program grant. And beyond that, we can, for big projects, and we've got a couple of them going on right now, we can apply for a multi-year green communities grant to pay for the infrastructure items, windows, air source heat pumps, and things like that. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Karen. So last night, CPDC held a public hearing, as Chris mentioned. Actually, sorry, go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks. One other update that I had, I attended the Historic District Commission meeting. And if people didn't know, 186 Summer Ave was sold. And the new owner was there applying for a emergency repair permit for the slate roof and a litany of other things. So it is full steam ahead on actually fixing Summer Ave at this point, which is good to see. And they also had MBTA communities with historic, and they talked a little about that on the agenda. And it looks like historic will be preserved under MBTA communities, but meaning that will supersede any other regulations. But once again, I'm not a lawyer and who knows really if that's the case, but that appears to be how it is.
Okay, thank you. So back to CPDC. Last night, MBTA Communities bylaws changes was the sole focus of the meeting. And as you might remember, CPDC has been looking at MBTA communities from a number of different perspectives. I think right before the holidays, they held a meeting focused on the boundaries and the mapping of the MBTA Communities district. Last night, they talked about zoning bylaws, which, as you know, require a 2/3 approval from town meeting. And so I think the goal here is for CPDC to finalize a vote on the zoning bylaw change recommendations for us to consider in February when we review the April town meeting warrant article. And so last night, there was a discussion about some added language in the zoning bylaws regarding affordable housing. And we had a discussion about, or they had a discussion about how the MBTA communities requirements, which is ultimately a housing production law that Governor Baker first proposed, the legislature adopted, and now Governor Healy is kind of doubling down on. We heard also about the fact that the affordable housing issue comes into play because, again, the other kind of item that we have coming from the state is the requirement to be at 10% of our housing stock at an affordable, so-called affordable rate in order to avoid the consequences of what's called 40B, which is essentially allowing affordable housing by right and giving us a lot less local control. We also heard a lot of discussion about lot coverage and kind of lot density and setbacks and the impact on roads, on traffic, on transportation with things like sidewalks, and on neighborhood character. And there was also some discussion about how dimensional controls and things like these lot coverage and setback revisions help get us into compliance with MBTA communities, which again requires zoning bylaws that encourage greater density by right. So CPDC will meet again on February 5th to vote on the voting bylaws. And I checked with planning staff today and they confirmed that there's going to be, I think, one more precinct specific meeting. Planning staff has also been meeting specifically with some of the precincts that are most affected by MBTA communities. There was a meeting for precinct 2, there was one for, I believe, for precinct 5, and then they're gonna do another one for 5 and 7. So stay tuned on the town website and social media feeds on that. And then Karen mentioned a lot about the MMA conference. When we heard last weekend that the governor's local Empowerment Act, as she called it, we had heard initially that the governor was proposing to remove any ceiling on liquor licenses by towns, and I was kind of looking forward to coming with that good news, but I saw that when the bill was actually announced yesterday, that was removed. So I think there are folks at the legislature who want to keep control over how many liquor licenses each municipality gets, but there's some good things in there in terms of things like excise and meals taxes and other items, as Karen mentioned. I met a finance director from Marion, Massachusetts, which is a small community down near Plymouth, and she was telling me how they've had to hire a new town manager and all new finance staff within like the past 6 months. And we were just sharing some stories, and it made me, or it reminded me about, we have a lot of folks across town, across departments who, you know, during this time when there's been a lot of change, have really done a great job at keeping the public services and the business of the town up and running. And so change is never easy, and so I want to thank those folks for keeping things going across the departments. And with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I'll second that. People did a great job there, so. A lot of this has been covered by your liaison reports, but I did go to the MLK celebration a couple weeks ago at the high school. That was really good, very well attended. So a big thank you to everybody who put that on. I thought that was an excellent event. I went to the MMA conference and trade show, and I think Karen and Jackie covered that very well. It's always good to go every year and see our delegation there and state officials and other municipal counterparts. There have been several Killam School Building Committee meetings that I've attended over the last 2 weeks. That project is up and running, going full steam. We have a great group of consultants and a great building committee team, and that's been taking up, you know, a lot of our time, but it's a worthy project, so I'm happy to do that. Recalc, the senior center, I'd gone to their stakeholder meetings that Mark had talked about. I went to the one from employees with BH&A, and there's a lot of good feedback coming in about that project, so I'm hopeful that that is also up and running and in good hands. People might have heard that water bills were delayed due to a software error, software glitch, and we apologize for that, but again, the bills are due on February 15th. For more information, go on our website, go on social media. We put a lot out there once we found out that that was going to be the change. There's not going to be any additional fees or whatnot, and I've heard that we're back on track with that. So apologize for the delay, but those bills are out now. The home rule petition regarding Reading's Affordable Housing Trust has been passed by the House and the Senate, and I'm told it's, as of this afternoon, on the governor's desk. She has until February 1st to sign it, and I'm hoping that she does. So that's something that's really coming up. A lot of work went into that. So I thank to the delegation, again, the House and the Senate, for passing that bill for us. And one last thing, custodian John Davis, who many of you've probably seen around this building, the library, has retired after 42 years of service in Reading, 42 years. We had a nice little reception for him at the library, and he tells me he wants to come back and help us with night meetings. So he may come back and help on the side during his retirement. He's a Reading guy. But thank you to John for 42 years in Reading. That's really remarkable. So. And that's my report.
Okay, great, thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Jackie. Could I just ask Matt something?
Yeah.
Sure.
Could we get an update on the Mallet Soames land over there?
Sure.
I only ask because a bunch of residents are complaining about the noise over there now from the pumps that are going 24/7.
Okay.
And they haven't really heard anything regarding that since the summer. So
Yeah,
we could,
I'll get a full update. I know it's progressing very well. If you can see, you know, I see it when I just drive by it every day. But I'll talk to our town engineer and get a full update on that.
thank you.
Awesome,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's 7:24, the public hearing is for 7:30. Do we have either in the room or on Zoom, the Meadowbrook folks? Okay,
Caitlin, do you see Brian or Pat, maybe?
No, no one's on Zoom.
okay. Well,
You have 5 minutes.
they do,
5 minutes.
yeah. Yep, so we'll give them,
Would you want to take meeting minutes out of order?
yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea,
Future
both.
agendas, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, so let's do the meeting minutes. Hopefully that won't take too long. I believe we've got 2 sets of minutes from January 9th and 16th that were in the select board's packet. I know I had just some tiny things on both. Caitlin, did you receive any others?
I only received the edits from you,
Which I can pull up if you would like.
Sure.
It should be pretty quick.
For mine.
Check. Just real quick, do we have an update? You mentioned,
Can you come,
sorry.
Ben, can you come to the
Oh,
podium,
yeah,
please?
sorry.
Yeah, and the public comment is passed, so if is there something specific?
Okay, I wanted to talk about the golf course. I was just looking for an update on the excavation that's going on there and about like the parking plan and just sort of wondering kind of where we're at. Are we on schedule?
So we're scheduled for an update on that at 7:45, so hopefully after we do the liquor
Okay,
license.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
thanks.
problem, sure. Okay, so January 9th, the only update I had was in the
It's
paragraph.
right here, right?
Yep, in the paragraph highlighted, just it goes from effects to effect and add an apostrophe about Reading's aid.
Seems fine with me.
And does anyone else have anything from January 9th minutes?
Not for me. Looks good.
Others? Okay. Thank you, Caitlin. And then January 16th, I just clarified one thing, I believe, with respect to one of the finalists. Yeah, so the interviews will be with the select board, not with other staff members. There will be an immersion event to meet staff and Superintendent Dr. Milachevsky. There will not be a tour of the town. And I also just wanted to specify that Matt is the current acting town manager.
Looks good.
Any others? Okay. So Karen, do you have a motion with respect to the approval of these minutes that you could read, please?
I do. Motion to approve, well, I think we could do both at the same time since they're both amended. Move to approve meeting minutes from January 9th, 2024 and January 16th, 2024 as amended.
Thanks, Karen. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Mark, and we'll do a roll call vote. Karen, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Jackie, yes. Okay, great, thank you. 7:28.
So point of information, we had this situation come up recently and with another liquor license renewal, and I'm wondering if I seem to remember we did not take action until the proponent, the owner of the establishment, could find a time to meet with us. Is that what other board members remember, in case they're unable to make it tonight?
As of this morning, I spoke with the proponent, they said they were coming. So unless something's changed since then, I do expect them.
Yeah, and to your question, Karen, I remember we had a liquor license application in the fall, where, in the situation was where we had a no-show and we continued it to the next meeting.
That's what I recall, so, okay, good to know, because it might just, may not work for tonight.
Okay. Well, I have 7:30 now.
We could go to the easement update first, and then just have to wait if they come.
Yeah.
We should give them at least 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So, I mean, I was hoping to have them here for the easement update, quite frankly, but
Right.
my understanding is that we still have, again, some other items before this can go before the select board for a vote. Mark, do you have more detail on that?
Yeah, so I think we're at the next and almost final step, which is a meeting of the Meadowbrook Board to take place on Monday night to formally authorize the president to sign the easement. Assuming that it's approved, they'll sign it and it'll come back to us to review, approve, and sign at the first meeting in February, assuming that everything flows on next Monday.
It'll go to legal first, or legal's already approved it.
Legal's already approved it. And actually, Conservation has as well. So it really is gonna be just coming back to us at that point for signature and stuff.
Jackie, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I might have missed it in the packet. Has is it still Pat Tompkins who is the president, or is there a new president over at Meadowbrook now?
I believe he's still president. Pat
Okay.
is.
I'm just gonna call the Simon's Way Exploratory Committee to order.
Thank you.
Any more update, Mark, or that was it?
Any questions?
Absolutely.
I wasn't aware there's construction going on there. I mean, he suggested there's construction going on over there.
Yeah, so they started the project. And you probably have much more of an update than I.
On which project, I'm sorry?
On lot 5.
I believe they started the project. I don't have a lot of detail on there, but it is underway. I could get you more full information on that, but I've heard it was underway.
Yeah, the plan was, I think, to get some of the stuff done before the weather kind of went south, or I guess it went north. So we're, they're somewhat separated. Obviously, we want them to be together, but that project was approved, it's underway, it's funded.
No, right.
Yeah, so now it's, I'm just trying to complete this, and then that will relate to some signage and things that I think will be beneficial to the whole community and to the Meadowbrook community as well. It's been a long process, but I think we're getting there. I think it's almost done.
And the number of spots hasn't changed, and the handicap spots hasn't changed, that was.
I'm not aware of any changes that took place. Pat, now's the time to nod your head.
Perfect, exactly.
Just giving an update that in terms of the easement that you folks, there's a board meeting on Monday night to hopefully authorize you to just sign the document, and then assuming that that goes through, it gets signed, then off we go.
Correct.
That's the plan.
Okay, great. And is Mr. Tompkins here on behalf of the liquor license?
They just walked in.
Oh, no, I know. Or
Yes.
I'm asking if there's like someone else
Oh,
or
sorry.
council
No,
or,
no.
okay, great.
Apologize if that already went by.
Okay, so Karen, can you please open the public meeting?
Hearing.
Hearing, can you open the public hearing? Thank you.
Yeah, hang on a second. That's not in the motions. Let me just grab it from the packet. Okay, give me a second. here.
Page 3.
Page 3, that should be easy. One, by order of, there it is, okay. Okay, to the inhabitants of the town of Reading, please take notice that the select board of the town of Reading will hold a public hearing on January 23rd, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the select board meeting room at Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. Or also available remotely on Zoom to act on an annual all alcohol club liquor license amendment, change of officers/directors for the Meadowbrook Golf Club Corporation of Reading, Massachusetts, DBA Meadowbrook Golf Club at 292 Grove Street, Reading, Mass. A copy of the proposed documents regarding this topic will be in the select board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. Sorry. And all interested parties are invited to attend the hearing in person or remotely via Zoom, or may submit their comments in writing to town manager at ci.reading.ma.us by order of Matt Canales, acting town manager.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So Matt, any background info or intro before Mr. Tompkins comes up?
No, I think the paperwork looks in order. There was no need for the police department to weigh in, I've been told, so I think you could just move ahead with it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tompkins,
Yes,
welcome. Can you please come to the podium?
Yeah, so we were just updating the corporate officers since our board is full of volunteers that it's like a rolling board. So it's just an update, no other changes to the liquor license, and we appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Tompkins? Or comments? No,
He's
okay.
doing well in school?
Yeah.
Just wanted to check, okay, thank you.
you.
And so are there any comments or questions about this item from the public in the room? Okay, Caitlin, any comments on this item on Zoom?
No public comment here.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the hearing regarding the change of directors application submitted by Meadowbrook Golf Club.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Second.
Second. Thanks, Mark. Okay, roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Jackie, yes. Okay, the public hearing is closed. And so any discussion items from board members? No. Okay, seeing none, are we ready for a vote?
Okay, so I have another motion.
Yes.
Okay, move to approve the change of director's application for the annual all alcohol club license at Meadowbrook Golf Club, 292 Grove Street, Reading, Mass.
Thanks, Karen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mark. Karen? What's your vote?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Jackie, yes. Okay, we're 5-0. And thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And
Thanks.
we look forward to hopefully seeing Meadowbrook again soon to finalize the easement. So, thanks. Great. All right, so the last item on our agenda is a presentation regarding an RFI for Simon's Way. So is there someone from, Chris, is it from Edge Sports? If you could please come up. And I believe it starts on in our packet at page 29. So if you could please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Chris Collins, Vice President, Director of Development with Edge Sports Group, and presenting today on the RFI issued for the Simons Way property. Good. Do you want to do like a hand signal? Is that
Just
easier
the
for you?
next slide can, yeah,
Gotcha.
just give Caitlin the next slide.
Edge Sports Group, what we do is design, build, and operate multi-use sports centers, both within Massachusetts and nationwide, mostly through public-private partnerships or public-private partnership-inspired projects. Next slide, please. Core functions of Edge Sports Group are where we are today with the town of Reading would be assessment, feasibility, and market study of some type of concept, whether it's aquatics, ice rink, field house, outdoor fields. It all starts with an idea, and that's really where the town of Reading is now. And then we lead the project through the design, permit, construction management phase, and then ultimately the end operations of whatever the asset is to be, and that's typically determined by the cities, the towns, the municipalities that we work with. Next slide, please. Over the past 30 or so years of Edge Sports Group or subsidiaries, we've completed $255 million worth of projects. Excuse me. And we have almost 10 million annual visitors. Next slide, please. Some of our projects to date that some folks may be familiar with, Boston Sports Institute in Wellesley, Thera Sports Center down in Braintree, and then a couple of up-and-coming projects, Mosaic Court out in Tucson, Arizona, and Olympus Sports Campus in Orlando. The top row is the first four are P3s, and then the next couple were acquired over the past 2.5, 3 years. But they all have P3 inspired, which is public-private partnership inspired backbones, meaning the high school time is reserved, the youth hockey time is reserved, and then you backfill that with private user groups. Same goes for field houses and aquatics as well. Next slide, please. Throughout the RFI, there was a couple questions on visitation rates, how many people are using these facilities, so put in a couple of our analytics. Down in Foxborough, where there's 3 sheets of ice, that does 1.2 million visitors a year. In Boston Sports Institute in Wellesley, which is 2 sheets of ice, 2 pools, and an indoor field house that flips back and forth between court and turf, does about 1 million visitors a year annually. Next slide, please. And then these slides just show you kind of the peaks on when visitation happens. So the bottom left is your hours over the course of the day. So generally the facilities open up around 6 a.m., close around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, depending on the surface. So your real peak heavy time during the weeknights especially are between that 4 o'clock window up until around 9 o'clock. And then if you can imagine, Saturday and Sunday in the youth sports worlds are fairly busy, but the rest of the days are stable as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the RFI that was issued, key goals were sports and wellness for the town of Reading, economic and community development, and open space and recreation. So typically, whether it's the town of Reading, somewhere in Indiana, somewhere in Texas, it all starts with an idea, and that idea usually leads into a survey monkey, which publicized on Facebook, social media, and very broad, open-ended questions about what to do with the property. The key findings to come back were the aquatic center, a recreation building, field house, possibly an additional sheet of ice to complement Burbank, pickleball courts, of course, dog park, skate park. And so when you really look at
Oh, I'm sorry. No, is this an 8 o'clock agenda item?
It is, yes.
Okay. How long?
We started about 3 minutes ago.
Okay, thank you.
just getting into the Reading specific stuff now. So when you get into kind of the core sizes of these assets, starting with the field house, where the RFI would like to develop a 4 basketball court, 8 volleyball court, and roughly 16 to 18 pickleball courts, you're looking at around 40,000 square feet of playing surface for that. Typically, each basketball court is just under 10,000 square feet, and you can split that into 2 women's and girls volleyball courts. So that's how that asset would break down. A natatorium, so the pools, it really depends on what style of pool that the town would want to go for. So for our sake of our test fit, we utilize a competition pool, which we'll get to a little bit later on, roughly around 25,000 square feet for the 13-lane pool, plus all the locker rooms. An ice rink, typically 85 by 200, so NHL size, 6 locker rooms, 4 day locker rooms, and 2 dedicated team rooms for whether it be high school teams or junior programs that are dedicated to that sole team, typically around 25,000 square feet. And then you have your complementary spaces. So it's really hard in modern times to just build an ice rink, to just build a swimming pool, to just build a field house. All these newer assets, they all have strength and conditioning, physical therapy, sports med, tutoring services, concessions, snack bar. Some of them even have bars in them now. And so we take all that into account as well. We design because it helps with the economics and it helps create an overall ecosystem for the community and a true recreation hub there. So, when you think of all the assets that were listed in the RFI and having to pack them into, I believe it's a 3 or 4 acre sliver there, it's fairly challenging. So if we can pop over to the next slide there. So these 2 sample test fits were from the original Weston Sampson study that was years, 6 months to a year or so old, that basically looked at what could possibly fit to the right of the property there. If you look at the 2 test fits there, it's a little snug, in my opinion. If we go one more slide, excuse me. There's a few other options there. Sorry, my eyes aren't super great, so I can't exactly see this far right now. But I believe the one on the left is the dog park, pickleball courts, and kind of a smaller 7v7, 9v9 soccer field for more of the little ones. And then to the right, they put in, I believe that's 2 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, and a multi-use court field house. So we looked at all that through the RFI process and then did our site visit, walked through Burbank, looked around the site overall, and I think it's a very, very unique position for the town of Reading or for any community now that has a need for recreation assets along with senior center, council on aging, and a community center. Because a lot of these assets, they're utilizing similar needs in every active recreation, whether it's a walking track, pickleball courts. A lot of these can double down into the same asset, whether it's a field house doing indoor pickleball and rolling out pickle roll, which makes the hardwood feel like a true tennis court or pickleball court, to serve those needs during the day. And so if you go to the next slide, please. We took this and said, hey, let's see how we can truly maximize this entire site. So in our test fit here, we grabbed the 2 biggest assets, not saying that it has to be a hockey rink and it has to be a swimming pool, but these 2 assets are the fixed sizes, whereas a field house, you can manipulate how your courts are laid out and still end up with 4 courts. But with a hockey rink and a swimming pool, you're pretty beholden on 25 yards and 85 by 200 for your sheet of ice. So obviously the dirt parking lot behind Burbank was not technically in the RFI, but we figured, hey, if we're gonna maximize this site and really this is the one kick at the candidate, let's at least look at this as an option and then utilize where those previous test fits were done by the Weston Sampson team as possibly parking, as possibly community center, senior center, what have you. And then probably more additional parking somewhere just south of the baseball field would be how to truly maximize this site, in our opinion and our architect's opinion, to get the most out of this for Reading, which kind of leads us to the next steps on these projects. So typically, when we throw an ice rink and a pool and a rendering, everyone's like, oh my God, they're building another sheet of ice behind Burbank, or we're finally getting a pool. Nothing is set in stone. It was simply a request for information and to spur conversation around what assets that the community would like to see moving forward, what's best for the 4-year-old in their learn to swim class and what's best for someone who just wants to come and do laps on their lunch break or do a master's swim team at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then if it's basketball, utilize the walking track, utilize it when it's in its pickleball mode. So really about maximizing these assets and getting most out of the space and actually creating more of a dynamic space for them that can flex and change as the sports and habits go. Because if you said 10 years ago pickleball would be the fastest growing sport, I think every single person in this room would be like, what are you talking about? What is that? And now it's everywhere. Every town meeting or city council meeting that I'm involved with, someone mentions it. So we'll take care of it. So one way or the other. So, I think truly it's kind of on, Reading and Burbank to figure out if this could even be a possibility. In my opinion, that's step 1 to further explore this. Because if this is not an option, if we go back up to that previous slide, please. It's really picking one major asset and sticking it there. But that major asset, whether it's a hockey rink, a field house, or a swimming pool, you're gonna utilize more parking as well. So you're not gonna get your dog park, or the dog park may be half the size of that as well. You won't have any more outdoor pickleball courts on this site. It's basically one asset, most likely in that bottom left-hand corner, and the rest of that sliver would be turned into parking. So I think it's very important that we certainly explore utilizing the dirt lot behind the Burbank first and foremost, because then that allows for the overall site to become a true recreation and community hub for Reading. You go back down. Questions?
Thank you, Chris. Carlos, since,
Well, Mark has his hand up,
sure. Let's go, Mark, and then I'd like to hear some context, please, from Carlo. Thanks.
So thanks, very, interesting to see kind of what it could be in some ways. I have kind of four things, mostly one comment and then kind of three questions. I'm glad you brought up the kind of senior center, adult active living center aspect. So as I look at some of the assets you started to play in there, that's one that needs to be thought of potentially. It potentially is allows you to do it on a multi-floor basis or different things, but as you're talking about different assets to play with, that's one of them that probably should get into that mix pretty quickly. And I would think plus or minus, we'll know a lot better pretty soon, but plus or minus maybe 16,000 square feet dedicated space to be thinking about that way. Second, your business model seems to focus a lot on ice. If I look at virtually every project, it's got ice in it.
Yep.
And then you mentioned that it's not necessarily a requirement either. So are there models where it isn't
Yes.
another piece of ice?
Ice is the pretty pictures that I have ready to use, but a lot of our buildings, they have a sheet of ice in a field house or sheet of ice in swimming pools. And a lot of the ice projects were a company born down the street in Bedford, and now we're located in Wellesley. So a lot of our projects started in Massachusetts, and hockey is one of those needs. The asset classes, whether it's an ice rink or ice rink field house, swimming pool, as long as the economics work, we're agnostic to the actual surface. Done them all or doing them nationwide, whether it's just a standalone 6 to 8 court field house or a swimming pool. So kind of agnostic to the surface, as long as the town's on board, the economics work for the development side, then that's how you know if the asset works or not.
So that was actually my next question. Can you give us an example of how the economics do work? So in a
Yeah, of course.
public-private partnership structure.
So public-private partnerships are different to every city, town, school, right? They all have their core of, okay, I'll go through the Wellesley model. Wellesley had the right of first refusal to acquire a 8-acre property on Route 9. And they had always had this vision of having a sports center in town, but didn't want to pay the $30-some-odd million to go out and build it and run it themselves. So they looked at the public-private partnership model for years in advance of acquiring this land. And then once they acquired the land, they studied it in depth and made sure what assets that they were going to go out to an RFI or an RFP for were truly what was best for the town. And that's really what I think is the next step for Reading, is to really look at, hey, what does a pool do for us, not only in the short term for 5 years, because we're going to have this thing and use of this for the next 50 years or 100 years. So that step is really critical from the town side, because we're in Massachusetts, in a high populated area. Land is hard to come by. So, you really only have one swing at this. So you really have to dial in those assets. When it comes to the assets, the most flex use would be a field house, because you can flip it between turf, court, pickleball, tennis, volleyball, basketball. You can ebb and flow and change with that. So that's really the most flex use, whereas an ice rink or a swimming pool, that they are what they are. But anyways, going back to the P3 nature, once you have your surfaces selected, then you figure out what do we need to reserve for ourselves, whether that's youth, practices and games, high school time, community access. And whatever that allotment is, you know, typically if it's, you know, a pool, you're gonna reserve the high school swim practice, which is typically every day between 3 and 4:30 or 3 and 5, whatever it may be. And then once that's reserved, when a potential developer looks at that, says, okay, I know I can't sell 3 to 5 every day because that's Reading High School swim practice, so I have to make sure my economics work by renting 5 to 8 to XYZ swim group. So that's really how the economics play out. Once we further get a better handle on the major assets that are to be in this building, and then running the economics behind those is how the deal ultimately gets structured. And when it comes to market rate versus non-market rate, it really comes down to the land. And if the developer is paying a market rate ground lease back to Reading, then typically the surface time is at a market rate for the user groups. If the ground lease is $1, okay, you take that market rate ground lease, if that market rate ground lease was $200,000, that cost saving is deployed to the Reading teams and Reading users. So a lot of steps to go. This is super, super early on in the process, but it's good to be having these conversations early because then you can get, okay, we don't need another rink. All right, well, we're good. Let's see if it works with a field house or a pool, or let's look at, you know, a field house plus, you know, the outdoor skate park and dog park, and just see what works and what fits best.
The numbers you were talking about with visitors tend to be 1 million plus. Is that kind of the unit of measure we're talking about here?
Depends on the asset and how it's programmed, but you know, if you consider lump in Burbank's existing user groups, you know, a single sheet of ice is probably 250, 300,000 visitors on a year-round basis. And then you can tie that in, whether it's an ice rink, a field house, or a swimming pool, pick two, you're probably flirting with 1 million, if not.
That's structured. Okay.
So.
One last question. There would need to be a lot of infrastructure improvement. How is that factored into the arrangement?
Yeah, it's a big one. Typically, you know, it comes down to the town and the developer. It's really, we have a project going on currently down in Charlotte where the site's a bit of a mess. So the city's actually doing all the infrastructure improvements for the site and prepping it, and then we come in with our private equity and design, build, and operate the building. So it's really, in Wellesley, we did the site improvements. Wasn't anything earth-shattering there. Wellesley took down the existing site, along with everything that was underground there. They took care of that when they took ownership of the property and, you know, prepped it to a certain point. So, you know, that's to be determined, but we've done it 6 different ways at this point, so.
Thank you.
Carlin.
Yeah, thank you. So the Simon's Way Committee hasn't met in a while, kind of waiting for this presentation in reference to the RFI. So we do have a meeting scheduled for next week, and hopefully within a couple meetings, we'll put something together to present to this board as far as per the survey, per our discussions, per the criteria, what we've evaluated that, you know, Reading kind of wants and needs in other youth organizations. And then from the Burbank side, I was hoping to get a definitive yes or no on another sheet of ice, but that didn't happen. At this point, on January, whatever it is today, we were still willing to listen to what's proposed and what can happen there. So I think what Chris mentioned, if Burbank says, no, we don't want a second sheet of ice on our land that we lease, doesn't mean we can't do it somewhere else, right? But we know that's a very valuable piece of land back there. It's dry, it's flat. Just talking about infrastructure, very little to be done there. I'm not an engineer or an excavator, but as far as all the land over there, other than the field that's there and the roads, that's the cleanest piece of land that's nice and clean without doing an environmental study. So I'm hoping after this presentation, Burbank, I will encourage Burbank Board to have a meeting to kind of give us some input. Not that they're the linchpin to this project by any means, but they have become a part of it. And we'd love to work with them, I think. I'm speaking for myself right now, that I think that would be great partnership. And so hopefully in the next couple months, Simon's Way will be wrapped up and we'll have something, some recommendations for the board. So I'll discuss that on future agendas to, keep a slot for us in the coming months. And that's kind of it from the Simon's Way end and the Burbank end. I don't see anyone here from Burbank, so I'm kind of speaking, not out of turn, but from what I was told.
And a question for you, did the rec committee see a version of this or see this presentation?
Probably not this last slide, but like Chris said, the previous slides were prepared months and months ago with the different plots. Fidel actually worked on that and Weston and Sampson worked on that. So the few slides before this rink and pool slide were options that I believe everybody saw, excuse me.
Okay,
They've been out there for a while.
okay.
Not this last slide.
Last slide was in our RFI response.
Yeah, okay. Yep, and I see the label of distinguishing Weston and Sampson, which, was like within the last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Fidel was
Yeah.
working on that
Okay.
many months ago.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this?
Unless someone has a question, I think
Okay.
I covered it.
Okay. Chris or Karen? Chris?
Thanks, Jackie. And thank you, Chris, for the presentation. So the final slide that's in here, where is everyone parking? It's taking the parking lot.
That would be to the right side. So kind of the,
In the cul-de-sac-y thing, or where are we
No,
talking?
so-
No,
if you don't mind,
the land that we acquired.
Oh,
yeah.
so it's just not shown on here?
So
Or it is?
there's multiple options, so you could do it in the woods to the south of the baseball diamond, which we don't have a site survey there. So that would be an option. I think the path of least resistance, if you go to slide 11, please, would be utilizing this space over here for parking and then the dog park, the skate park, items like that, along with parking to serve the field house pool, the ice rink pool, whatever combo would be attached to the Burbank.
Yeah,
So
because-
parking is always a challenge with these.
Definitely. So I guess for me, just seeing the difference in these four variations plus this bottom one, it just seems as if the bottom one is like the only test fit that works compared to the other ones. Unless Edge Sports is just Edge parking lot. Like, all I see up there right now is a parking lot and some little things tossed to each side of it, essentially.
Yeah. So Edge didn't do these
No,
ones. I'm just highlighting where the parking in theory would have been.
So you were able to do the sample fit on this behind Burbank?
Yep.
But not on any of these other four sections?
No,
Because it would be helpful to see what that would have looked like.
because the way it curves in, they wouldn't fit.
So
An
you
ice
can't-
rink and a pool, you could probably squeeze some combination of an indoor field house down there. But because of the way the
Yeah.
property line curves in, you couldn't get a rectangle in there. That's,
So you can't do any of the major items that you have typically done in the past?
we could not down there, no.
I mean, I don't even, I don't know, it's, I should probably keep my comments to myself on this then, so.
Can I just
With that,
mention something? So early on, if the board remembers, and Fidel, took a lot of liberties with this stuff, and nothing bad. But he did have a 30,000 square foot building, if everybody remembers, on the land to the right side. So that there was a footprint, multi-story building that was about 30,000 square feet. So if Weston and Sampson determined that could be done, I'm hoping you guys could figure that out as well with parking off to the right there, if I'm looking straight on. So the building would be to the left, and all the parking would be to the skinny part and all the way to the right. But again, that was just a rendering. Didn't say what would be in the building, but that was very early on in the process. That with the setbacks and all that, it was obviously a multi-story building, 30,000 square feet.
I saw Karen's hand up, so I just want to let Karen speak and then I'll come back to you, Chris. Karen, go ahead.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks so much for coming in tonight. I appreciate that. I had a couple of questions regarding the Wellesley project. It's been up and running for a bit now. I'm wondering how long is your lease, and does the town of Wellesley have first priority or any sort of guarantee in the negotiated lease that hours that are reserved for swim teams, hockey teams, whatever it is, it doesn't disappear in the future? So that's one question.
Yep, the ground license in Wellesley is 50 years plus an additional 50-year option. And their times, whether it's youth hockey, youth swimming, are written into the ground lease themselves, which is all public record. I'm more than happy to pass that along for review.
Thank you, that's helpful, and I think if we were to move forward, that would certainly be helpful. One other question, we brought up the topic of infrastructure. That's a very narrow road heading into that site. But the other thing, I'm wondering, since you've done so many projects around the country, what has been your experience with building structures on less than pristine land? I'm speaking to some of the folks here at DEP, and I'm getting some feedback that when you're building buildings and you're building parking lots and you're not building, grass areas that people are going to roll around in, then that can really make, and depending what your site is like, that can make sites that we might have previously thought unviable, viable. And I'm wondering if you've had any experience with that in any of your projects.
Yep. Worcester, or the Worcester Ice Center and Canal District on Harding Street. That was kind of a mess of a site. An old factory, and there was toxic waste and just terrible stuff. So that was all cleaned up with grants through the state and site prep that way. And then down in Charlotte, we were working on a project that's redeveloping an old mall site that was built in the 70s or 80s. So the infrastructure that's underneath the ground there is pretty intensive, and the cleanup work to get it prepped for outdoor fields plus a field house is going to be pretty intensive and pretty hefty cost. So, those would probably be the two messier, sites that we've worked on.
Okay, I guess, it made sense to me. I have to say I was sort of surprised to start getting this kind of feedback, and I understand if you're going to have fields, it needs to be clean because you're going to be in contact with them. But if you're just going to pour a foundation in a parking lot, apparently maybe not so, depending on what it is.
And that could be another benefit of doing the parking on this site that's shown on the TVs here is, there's some questions on some of the dirt around here. So maybe its best use is a parking lot to serve Burbank plus new recreation assets. So it's all something to discuss and explore further.
And Carlo, the SWAC committee's done a lot of really good work. And we've spent significant monies in town and staff time and consultants. So, I'd be looking forward to the SWAC committee, the final project, capturing that good information. Because this is the first time we've looked at this site in 30 years. And, mindful of taxpayer dollars, we wanna, that is part of the report coming out of that committee, then that's in a good place for us to pick it up and not have to reinvent the wheel. That's it, thank you.
I agree.
Chris, a programming question for you. You mentioned the fact that field houses have a lot of versatility. Have you seen with either in any of the examples in your presentation or kind of elsewhere in the industry, an indoor pickleball component to field houses?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a product that I would recommend looking into. Anyways, it's called Pickle Roll, where it's a roll-up kind of synthetic floor, and you can throw it on out over the basketball court, and it mimics the feel of a true pickleball court. So.
And do any of these examples of the projects, do any of them have the pickle roll?
We will be doing it in Arizona, which we are breaking ground on here late winter, early spring. So that's the first project we have it, pegged for. Where our surface down in Braintree at their academy is kind of it's a bit more texture because Thayer plays tennis down there, or in that field house, so you can play pickleball on it because of the texture.
Okay.
It's not playing pickleball on a hardwood basketball floor.
So that surface can be relatively
Yeah, it's
easily.
called pickle roll, and you roll it right up.
You roll up.
You roll it down, and when you're done with it, you roll it back up, and you secure it with double-sided tape, pretty much. And then the basketball court's the turf mechanism. So your core surface is going to be the hardwood base, and then you can bring in, it's kind of a turf panel system that you can convert all your courts, or 50% of them, or 60% of them, into turf in the winter months. What that does is when the AAU, so the travel basketball cycle, the tournaments kind of take a downturn during high school and middle school basketball season, rightfully so. The kids should be playing for their high schools and middle schools. So you can deploy the turf system to serve lacrosse, soccer, flag football, baseball, softball, you name it, whatever grass sport you want in there.
Carlo?
Can I open it up to any SWAC members that have questions?
Sure. Okay, so I'll go Ms. Binda and then Ms. Janowski. And then Mr. Robinson. Thank you. Ms. Binda,
Thank you.
can you come to the podium, please?
Yes.
And
Yep, I'll introduce myself. Angela Binda, I'm on the Recreation Committee and the SWAC Committee. Thank you for this presentation. It seems like what you have is all built space, and I'm wondering if there is a size of an indoor space that you need to build to be profitable, because I think that one of the things that the Recreation Committee and that was mentioned at the Recreation Committee, one of the things that we were looking for, and I think that it was mentioned maybe at SWAC too, is we're looking for outdoor spaces to like a lacrosse field. And while indoor pickleball is wonderful so that people can play year round, what we heard from a lot of the pickleball players who are coming to the Recreation Committee and the SWAC is that while indoor pickleball in the winter is great, but they really are looking for outdoor space too. So we were thinking that this has sort of been positioned or thought of as a place where we could put outdoor pickleball courts. And we're looking for outdoor pickleball courts, we're looking for, maybe another field, multi-purpose field. And I know that for the Wellesley project, that one of the things that you did was, one of the trade-offs or whatever you want to call it, is that you built a field for Wellesley. For them? That's not true?
And so we'll ask Chris if you could please come back up so
Okay.
that the
So,
folks on Zoom.
I spoke to somebody at Wellesley and that's what they told me, that there was a field that was built that is just their use. I spoke to somebody in Wellesley, and that's not true.
I was part of that project. and-
Okay, is there any outdoor space in Wellesley?
No, there's not.
There's, that is not part of your ownership, but that is part of the that Wellesley owns and controls.
No. I'm confused on, I told you that, but no. No,
I
That was
spoke
not
to
part of
somebody
the
in Wellesley.
yeah, that was not part of the project.
That wasn't part of the project.
No, that entire project's public record.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to share with the group.
Okay, I spoke with somebody at Wellesley Town Hall, I don't remember, it was,
Yeah, we didn't build an outdoor field or anything.
is there any outdoor fields, is there any outdoor amenities on that property that,
A parking lot.
so there are no outdoor spaces? Okay, so is your profitability tied to the size of the building, or would there be room to have outdoor spaces like a pickleball court, outdoor pickleball courts or field space?
Ms. Binda, I also wanna point out the fact that when is the SWEC meeting again?
Next week.
Okay, and are you planning at some point next week or in the near future to bring Edge Sports back to SWEC to go through this presentation and address questions? I want to avoid, because we haven't, I mean, I get that you've called SWEC to order, but we don't have a SWEC agenda, and I want to make sure this doesn't
No,
lead into becoming a SWEC meeting.
no,
Okay.
I don't disagree. I had no intention, because we're seeing this tonight
Right,
and we'll have the presentation
Yeah.
in hand, and we can go over it without bringing Chris back. I mean, that seems to be a waste of time, but I'll talk to the other committee members.
so what I'm asking is, I think it sounds like bringing Chris back to a SWEC meeting might address some of these questions.
Okay, yeah, so we were sort of told that this was the only opportunity that I was under the impression, I think other people were too, that this was the opportunity to ask questions, because I don't believe SWAC was, we were getting another presentation, so that's,
It sounds like the chair of SWEC is, I don't wanna speak for you, but
Right.
is willing to bring Edge Sports back to SWEC, so.
We can, I
Yeah.
think it's.
Okay,
More than happy to come to a meeting and discuss this a little bit further.
okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Benda.
Thanks.
Ms. Janowski, and then Mr. Robinson. And again, just kind of keeping in mind that, we don't have a SWEC agenda tonight, but happy to hear some brief remarks on this before that committee takes up this work.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Janowski.
Karen Janowski, I'm on SWEC as well. And I am a little confused because we do have an agenda item as SWEC. We did get a notification and the agenda item was that we would give this presentation.
Okay,
So,
was the agenda posted for tonight?
It wa-
yes.
It was, okay.
The meeting was posted. We didn't have an agenda.
Wasn't there an agenda item of SWEC? I mean, of the
Right.
EDGE presentation?
There is to attend the select board.
To attend, yeah, and that's my
Right.
point,
Okay.
is to attend the select
Thank
board
you
and
for
offer some
clarifying, because I
comments.
misunderstood as well.
Sure.
But my question is, if the space that you're using is not available because we don't know for sure if it is, then what would be the status of your participation?
We would have to get creative in reconfiguring some of those elements. Really, you're looking at a field house plus some of those outdoor amenities.
Would it be advantageous to your company?
It would, but I think it's a lot more challenging to do that on a smaller scale when you can mirror two big assets, whether it's a pool and a field house, pool and ring field house. That's obviously more profitable for a private developer.
Okay, I did have that question. And many town organizations have said that this is the best place for pickleball because as you know, we have very little open space and it has been identified by the rec committees, even select board members have said it, and SWAC has determined it as well. So that's one thing I do want to say as well, that this is prime space. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Janowski. Mr. Robinson?
So I have a question about the RFI. Is that in bounds or?
I think it
The
is, but kind
response.
of, you know, with the kind of knowledge that the SWEC will review this RFI in a lot more detail.
So Chuck Robinson, Recreation and SWEC. Chris, thank you. My question was, so when we put together the RFI, it's been a while since I looked at the survey that went out, but a sheet of ice was on there, but it wasn't way up at the top of the list, and it seemed like this RFI kind of focuses on a sheet of ice as opposed to some of the what I would, you know, like the senior stuff, the pickleball courts. And I think maybe that was maybe part of Karen's question is, was that in there because that's more advantageous for your company to, in a public-private relation? Because, you know, we have a sheet of ice. I look at this piece of land as a place where we can do things that we don't have now. You know, we don't have a dog park, we don't have pickleball courts, we're trying to do something with the senior center, so I guess that's kind of what I was looking for was.
Completely understand, and that test fit, again, is taking the wish list, if you will,
Yeah.
and picking the items that have a fixed size to them, such as a rink, such as a pool, and seeing how those would fit on the site to kind of spur the conversation on what do we actually want to put out there. Because within the actual RFI response packet, it says ice rink or field house, you know, in that 30,000 or 25,000 square foot space.
So if you take that ice rink out and you leave that building in, you solve maybe that parking problem, right?
You could, or you could take where in our test fit, there's lines on it for a hockey rink. You imagine that as basketball courts, and then, you know, maybe a smaller pool. Maybe you don't need 13 lanes, although that hurts the swim meets because you do need warm up and cool down lanes. But you know, there's minor things you can do to kind of shrink that shell. But to really get two of those bigger assets, you're utilizing that dirt lot behind Burbank. So, you know, what they ultimately are, you know, that's to be determined, but at least to show the size visually, whether it's a hockey rink at the end of the day or 6 basketball court field house, we'll sort it out.
Okay, I don't want to get out of my lane. So.
Thanks, Mr. Robinson. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions or comments from the board, thank you very much for the presentation. It's really helpful to kind of see what some of the options are there from and some of the work that you've done in other places. So more to come on that.
And happy to go to take more questions and more. But
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. All right, so next item is future agenda items. So that starts on page 42 of our packet. It's not in the packet, but just as a reminder to everyone, on Saturday, this Saturday, January 27th at 9 a.m. in this room and on Zoom and on YouTube, we will be interviewing the,
Motion to adjourn.
oh yeah, sure.
Someone do a motion to adjourn, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All right, no one's on Zoom, so we're all here in person. All in favor? Thank you, guys.
I'm not here on Zoom, but thank you.
Oh, Heather, all right, let me do an official, sorry.
Is there some?
No, I vote to adjourn too.
Yeah, I know, but I have to do a roll call, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Heather,
Yeah.
Nancy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and Angela?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carlo, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night. So just as a reminder to folks, this Saturday, January 27th, 9 a.m. in this room, we'll be interviewing the 4 finalists for the town manager position. And so to agenda items on February 6th, right after select board liaison and town manager reports, let's put discussion and vote on town manager. Let's start that at 7:30 and give it, let's give it 45 minutes, so 7:30 to 8:15. Then at 8:15, we can start the preview warrant for April town meeting.
So I think we'll have the easement also.
Yes, I was gonna say that. So after the warrant for the April town meeting, we can have discussion and vote on Meadowbrook easement. And then we should also add an executive session at the end of February 6th to discuss town manager contract. And I've asked Harrington Heap to attend the meeting on February 6th. And then with respect to February 27th, first and foremost, we need to vote to close the April town meeting warrant articles. Matt, I also see on February 27th, we have items to close. And Caitlin, could you please share on your screen page 42 so we can all look at the future agenda items? I see we also have the vote to close the warrant on local election and on the presidential primary. Matt, is that enough time? It sounds like that is probably non-controversial because the ballot language is, but is that enough time given the March 5th elections?
I believe so. I mean, Laura, I discussed it with her, and these are mandatory items that, that she needs for the election. I will double check on the date, but I remember going over it with her, and she didn't raise any concerns about it. So, but I'll check. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. No, that's a good idea.
All right. Any other agenda items for the 2 February meetings? Yes, Mark.
I know we talked a little bit about VASC getting together. There are some committees that could use some members.
Yes, we're waiting, at least as far as I know, we are waiting to determine whether the retirement board is a VASC appointment or not. We think it's probably not, but we're just checking on that. And then once we get confirmation, we will schedule. We know we have Board of Health interviews and it sounds like some other applications.
Yep, we've got trust fund commissioners. I think there are actually a variety.
Okay, great.
I had 2 things and then just a clarification. So February 27th, vote to close the warrant for local election. But early voting is happening before the 27th. How can both of those actually take place?
I'll like I said, I'll run it by Laura and see. I know what you're saying about early voting, but those were the dates that we had picked, and she was aware of early voting, so I'll check it out. Yep.
Yeah, so if that needs to happen, Matt, on the February 6th,
Yeah, we can move it
let's
up.
put it on there.
Yeah, I will check with her. I will double.
But hopefully it is like
That's a
the
good point.
wording of an in-person ballot specifically, as opposed to like the earlier mail-in.
So the other 2 items I had, I think seeing how the progress for MBTA has progressed throughout, the past 6-9 months, however long it's been, I think we have to have another refresher here or see about postponing it until November's ballot, because things just keep changing in real time, which is good. But I think that we need to have a presentation or something before us.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the CPDC will vote on the zoning bylaws, which are kind of what town meeting actually needs to approve, on February 5th. So presumably, when we review the warrant article on February 6th, we'll have that CPDC approved zoning bylaws language. And we can review it on February 6th and then vote on it on February 27th.
So, but that's a formality though, correct?
No, I don't, what do you mean by a formality?
That we have to vote yes on it regardless because CPDC is putting it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, in the charter, it does say the boards and committees. But I think, you know, typically we've voted on warrant articles, like I think, you know, that came up, I think, in the context of, was it the polystyrene ban when the Climate Advisory Committee, you know, gave it, you know, gave their approval, it was on a warrant article and we had a vote on whether to include it on the town meeting warrant.
It's difficult without getting into deliberating over things,
Yeah.
but we heard the other night some members of the public not even thinking the bylaw was even relevant to have in the first place because it's a solution to a problem, et cetera.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is correct. I
Right.
just think that this just seems way too quick to be happening. It's just my honest opinion. And if we do have until November, it seems, I don't know, that's gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, my plan is to at least put it on the agenda. I mean, and again, we don't, you know, we're assuming that the CPDC is going to approve it on February 5th. And if they do, I would like to include it in our discussion. Because I think the compliance deadline is the end of this calendar year. So, yeah.
And the other item, I met Robert Lee at Mandarin over the weekend for one of the fundraisers that he does over there. And he came before the select board, I don't know if you were there, Mark, maybe not, like 5-6 years ago, and got a proclamation for everything that he's done in the town, et cetera. But they're at like $98,000 for the amount of money that they've raised since they've been in Reading. So I was just seeing if we could maybe do something, have him come in when they break the 100,000. Just something like that, like we did 5-6 years ago.
You can add that to kind of future agendas.
It doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
it's based off his timing as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Other agenda items, Mark?
Just a question, back to the election warrant questions, that they're troubling. I wonder if you can get an answer tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because if there is something that's really time sensitive, we could still add it to Saturday morning's agenda.
Okay.
If we need to do something really quickly.
Yep.
Otherwise, it does wait till Feb 6th and hopefully there's no issue.
Okay,
But
no,
if there is an
I'll
issue,
I'll
you're
check
gonna
with
deal
Laura
with it
first thing.
fast.
Yeah.
No problem.
Especially the local election you're referring to.
Yeah, well, they're both, you
Yeah.
know, sitting there,
No,
but the
no.
ballots are
I know.
getting printed probably
Right.
pretty soon, if not already.
Right. Yeah, it is very tight.
Okay.
Other agenda items? Karen, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm a little, can we back up a little bit on the town manager process? We are going, I'm not sure I got it all. We are going to hear from the candidates on Saturday. We are not going to select a candidate. When would we be discussing and voting on a candidate? I think I heard an agenda item for an executive session for a contract discussion, but I didn't hear when we might be voting.
So our plan, Karen, is to vote on February 6th at our meeting to discuss and vote on the town manager. And then I also want to put an executive session there because assuming the vote does happen on February 6th, we need some time in executive session to discuss the contract.
Gotcha, I missed that.
And
Thank you.
just to clarify, that timing is also consistent with Bernie Lynch's advice on when to host the discussion and the select board vote.
Okay, thank you. Usually our policy, this is a different item, but I'm
Looking
looking
at
at,
the CPA study committee, and I'm wondering if we should have a discussion item, and it can be brief on the 6th, so that we can just go ahead and vote on the 27th. Because that's my
We can
policy.
add it, it's already quite a long agenda on February 6th, but we can add a discussion item and then a vote on February 27th.
because I'm looking at the packet and I see preview town warrant for April town meeting. And we just talked about discussing the town manager and going into an executive session. Did I miss something else?
Yeah, so on February 6th, we're discussing and potentially, hopefully voting on a town manager. we're previewing the warrant article, we have a Meadowbrook easement, and then assuming we vote on a town manager, we have an executive session to discuss the contract, so pretty robust.
Well, you're assuming that Meadowbrook's ready, and we haven't had a good record with that, so,
Who's ready? Assuming who's ready?
the Meadowbrook, assuming the easement's ready.
Yeah, well, even without Meadowbrook, we've got a lot of big things on February 6th, so.
Well, I'm gonna put it out there, I want all of our select board members to be comfortable with the discussion and a vote on February 27th.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we should fix it. Is everybody good with that?
Discussion and vote on,
In one night, discussion and vote in one night on the CPA study committee? Or should we just have a quick discussion, of the members and the charge, and then we voted on the 27th?
so I thought we didn't we have a discussion on the study committee when it was presented?
Yes, we did. We had a discussion last year in either November or December.
So we already discussed, okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that, that makes sense, if
Okay.
everybody else is, okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, that's it. So, we did the minutes. I think that's all for agenda items, so, unless anyone has anything else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
There is.
moved.
Okay. Thanks, Mark, thanks, Karen, and we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Karen.
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Jackie, yes, and so we're adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.